right now. And for what might be the first time in recorded history, we have started Hosted Bar on time. I think with some amount of certainty that people can hear both of us. And I don't think that there are any technical problems right now.
Oh, now you just blew it. Now it's going to blow up in like 2 seconds.
I am like 90% certain this is working.
Excellent. Well, then let's get started so we can find out if we're right.
Cool. Let's do it.
As you said, this is Hosted Bar. I'm Erin Ogden, and this is Jeff Blazer. And today we don't have guests because we're talking about all the smart things that our guests said last time. If you watched, that was Trisha Perkins and Jane Clark from Lake Effect HR and Law, and they talked to us about how to help your employees when shit goes down. And speaking of shit going down, your audio wasn't working last time, Jeff, but it didn't really matter till the very end when we were talking about holiday parties and why you don't like them. I said you didn't like them, but nobody could hear why you didn't like them. So what we know that Trisha said she likes them because it gets them lots of work. Why don't you like them?
Probably for a lot of...
And what are we drinking? Oh my gosh, I forgot.
So, which should I answer first? Should we get the drinks out of the way first?
Sure.
Let's get the drinks out of the way first. What are you drinking? Your drink is fancier than my drink by a significant margin.
Mine is a Christmas cookie martini.
That looks like a...
And sprinkles.
That looks like that is going to be a complete mess when you spill it all over your desk.
It will be, and it's quite the sugar high.
It looks like it's quite the sugar high. It looks like it's quite the sugar high. I am drinking out of a mug that matches your sweater. And I am drinking in my Ireland cup. I am drinking Irish coffee. So I have a nice Colombian coffee with some single malt Bushmills Irish whiskey, the 10-year that we got when we were in Ireland at the Bushmills distillery. So that came from the place. That was a pretty cool place too. I was pretty impressed.
They did some contract manufacturing that maybe we can talk about at a later date. But
Some
not
other
today.
time.
Do not go down that rabbit hole.
So, a quick detour. We'll look at that rabbit hole, but then we're going to go right past. I had been digging around my old Madison Beer Review stuff. So if anybody wants to look, MadisonBeerReview.com is now back active again. Apparently, somewhere along the road, I wrote a 4-part series on contract manufacturing. And each blog article was 2,000 words. I wrote almost 10,000 words on contract manufacturing at some point in my prior life.
Yup.
That's crazy. How did I have time for that?
It is, and yet I am not.
Where did I have time to write 10,000 words on contract beer manufacturing?
Could you remind me what you did this year about things? Didn't you kind of accidentally write a textbook?
Yeah, I accidentally wrote a textbook this year. So,
as I said, crazy yet completely believable.
All right. Well, fair enough. All right, we're done with that rabbit hole.
Back to the Jeff Ranta. Why don't you like holiday parties?
Why don't I like holiday parties? I've never liked holiday parties. I mean, aside from the holidays themselves, right? Like the holiday piece of it is sort of its own thing. But is I mean, kind of gets to the point here, right? That not everybody loves parties. And um, so I never liked parties because I never liked holiday parties because I don't like parties in general. Like, I was never comfortable at parties. I was never comfortable around strangers. Like, they just always felt like a chore. It always felt like a task for me to go to these parties, and I didn't want to be there. And I went and I drank and I said hello to people, but I otherwise stood in the corner and didn't really want to talk. And the hard part about it, at least for people like me, or at least for me, I'm not even to say for people like me, but the hard part about it for me was I felt like I had to go, right? And this is a really bad analogy, but I'll make the analogy anyway, right? It was sort of like, back in the when I was back when I was a software developer, I had smoked cigarettes, and the whole team would go out on a smoke break. And if you didn't go with the team on the smoke break, you felt like you were missing something, and you felt like you were being left out of the team. And similarly with holiday parties, and maybe you could draw a parallel to the risk of death or how bad for your health the smoking and holiday parties are. Um, but similarly with holiday parties, there's sort of this pressure that if you don't go to them, that you're missing out on something. That if that the other people there are gaining this important camaraderie, and if you don't participate in that, then you're missing out on that camaraderie. And while I think that that's of course true to some extent, I think what we can do as an employer and be better about is be cognizant about the fact that not everybody loves parties. I don't love parties, and I guarantee you that, yeah, or holidays, right? This is just leaving aside the fact that you're holding a Christmas party for a bunch of Jews. Like, put that to the side, let alone, Muslims and atheists and all other kinds of religions that don't celebrate Christmas. And then you walk in, and the first thing you see is the giant fucking Christmas tree or holiday tree that happens to be green and red and has a bunch of fucking crosses all over it. So, setting aside the religion piece of it, there are people that just aren't comfortable in party situations. And when you throw them into that situation, they show up because they feel like they have to. There's some duty to show up. You're not getting the best version of them. You're not getting the friendly Jeff. You're getting the Jeff that has to be there, Jeff. And then everybody's going to leave the party and talk about how much of a drag Jeff was. Well, Jeff's not a drag. Jeff just doesn't like fucking parties. So people are getting a bad impression of me, and it complicates or maybe even exacerbates not showing up in the first place. So so if we don't have holiday parties, or if we think harder about how we can accomplish the employee celebration that I think holiday parties are meant to be, if we can think about that in a way that's more inclusive, then I suspect that the final end product doesn't actually look a whole lot like what a lot of fucking Christmas parties look like.
I was just going to say, one of the struggles, right, is how do you get the camaraderie? How do you get, because there's a lot of team building and a lot of trust building that happens when you aren't doing work stuff, right? Getting to know your colleagues as people, not just as bosses or underlings or cohorts. And parties are often meant to do that, though frankly, as an underling, I was always just terrified of doing something and having it go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So how do we, as employers, set up something where we can build that team and trust building and people learning without putting the introverts or party haters or whatever it is in a difficult position? Is it just have the parties and know that the people who like parties will be there and have something else as well? You know, because I feel like it might just be have a diversity of options.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one. I think that's one option, right? Is just have a diversity of options, right? Jeff doesn't like parties, but Jeff loves. Why am I talking about myself in the third person? I don't like
Oh, I
parties.
was letting you do it though.
I don't like parties, but I do like board games, right? And I have never worked at a place of employment. I've never worked at a company where somebody else there didn't play board games, right? So I'm not saying you need to have a holiday party and a board game party, but I am saying that like giving people options and saying, hey, we're going to do a holiday party, but we're also gonna support this online board gaming thing, or people getting together to have games, or we're going to support this other thing as well. And so we don't just have this one thing for everybody to go to, but we have two or three or four things, so that if you can't make this thing, you don't like this thing, you want to participate in something else, we'll have a book club, or I mean, whatever it is, I
Right.
mean, but offering two, three, four options, so that people who can't make the party don't feel bad about not being able to be there. They don't feel like they're missing out. That the people who love parties may not like playing board games, and so they're going to miss out on that camaraderie. But the people who like board games are all going to get to know each other better, right? So you don't just have one opportunity to develop that camaraderie. You have multiple opportunities and multiple different modes of.
I was going to say that's the important part. So it's not just multiple different parties;
Right,
it's multiple modes.
right.
So another thing that Jane and Trisha talked a lot about, all of this was like talking about like how do we help employees when things kind of go awry. And one thing they talked about was um, kind of empowering your employees to deal with issues,
Yeah.
right? And creating leaders. Um, and so I think that it's something that's always been important to me is how do I learn how to be a leader? How do I help others? And so one of the things like Richard Branson was always saying is like create, you know, to have your employees teach them that they could leave you at any time and go somewhere really well, and then treat them so they don't want to,
Yeah.
and create leaders so you don't have to be the one telling them what to do. So I'm a big fan of it, but I know people that sometimes get concerned that if you do that, you're just teaching them to leave. Like I said, Jane, Trisha, and I talked a lot of it last time because you were a little wrapped up in a lot of the technology. Do you have any thoughts about kind of employee empowerment or
Yeah.
leadership training, and like when does that start?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, I feel like,
But not
but you,
online.
maybe not. Yeah. Right. Not with the camera running. Um, but, I mean, you have to trust your employees, right? If you don't trust your employees, your employees will understand that you don't trust them. And if you don't, and the way that you show that you trust employees is that you leave them alone to do their jobs, right? And if they're not doing their job, then you get rid of them, right? They have to do the job, right? That's the end of it. But um, but people need to feel like they have some autonomy over what they do. People need to feel like they have some authority over what they do and the people that they deal with, right? They need to have an outlet for creativity, right? I think about all of the jobs that I've ever left or been unhappy in. And the jobs that I've left and been unhappy in are jobs that in one way or another didn't provide one of those things, right? And you know, for example, I didn't work for Google, but one of the things that I always really liked about what Google says about their employees is that they all have time to work on their own projects at Google while at work. You can have the resources of Google for your own personal pet projects, right? You can do that. You can have some percentage of your time. And the reason why it works, is because if you don't give it to them, they're going to do it anyway, right? Or they're going to resent you for not letting them do it. So let them do it. Let them bring it into the company. Let them make the company better by doing their own things, by being creative, right? By having this outlet for the things that they want to do to make themselves better, right? And it may not have anything to do with their job, right? It might have nothing to do with their job, but that's okay. Because if they need a break away from their job by doing something that makes them happy, if you don't give them that, they're going to get away from the thing they don't like about their job by leaving. Right? And you need to give them autonomy and authority, because otherwise they don't feel like they have the capability to do the job that you've assigned them. Right? And everybody knows, everybody's been to a restaurant or has been to a retail situation where the person that you're talking to doesn't have the authority to make whatever it is that happened better. They have to rely on somebody else in order to make your situation better. That never works for the client. That never works, in our case client, in that case customer, right? That never works for the customer, right? They want it resolved. They want it resolved right now, and they want it resolved by the person that's standing in front of them. They don't want to be handed off to a manager. They don't want to be handed off to somebody else. They don't want to be given, they don't want to be just written off. They want the problem solved, and they want the problem solved right now. So give those people the capability to solve problems.
So I think, first of all, Google is having some HR issues right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Google's not the best place to.
I think it is, but Microsoft does the same thing where they encourage people to work on it.
Yeah, a lot of companies do.
By letting them do that, it spurs creativity, and creativity is kind of contagious, right? Mm-hmm. And the excitement is contagious, and so it'll carry over into their other work. But I guess I wouldn't argue that they don't want to be handed off or things, but what they don't want to be is written off. I think your point of that. And now sometimes it has to go up to the manager, sometimes they'll ask the manager, but I think giving
yeah, I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere, right? I mean, we're not gonna, you're not gonna let your legal assistant sign checks for the company, right? I mean, maybe she does, to be honest, but.
I trust Hannah. So I think
but I mean, of course, there are limits to authority. I mean, I'm not really arguing that there shouldn't be limits to authority.
Let's say create agency. I don't mean necessarily the legal term of agent, but creating where they feel not only where they feel like they have the authority, but the actual authority. Yeah, not everything, right? You don't want the waitress to do the same thing as the CEO
of course.
Every level. But they should be able to make things right for, they shouldn't have to go and ask, can I give somebody a free set of fries if they're angry? Right? That should be easy. And I think it also goes to kind of
or get 8 levels of approval to send somebody a new Cricut machine after the prior one almost sets your house on fire.
Right. And it shouldn't take a month to do it. Not that we have personal experience with thing. Because I have
to be fair, Cricut did make it better. So they did send you a new one.
They finally did it only after some strongly worded emails, and they never dealt with the other things that got ruined because of it. And I'm very frustrated still. But
sorry, sore topic.
But what I was going to say is a lot of that is also not just giving them authority, but having employees back when they say something, and then as an owner or employee or manager coming in and not undercutting them, right? Like I just remember when I was wait staff, if I said this, either that I was going to do something to make it right, or say this person was out of line, especially bartending, right? This person is out of line, and I'm there, and they're out. then my manager has to say, yup, and do the same thing behind, right? If they undercut that, then not only does it usually make the situation either bad in the short term, but usually makes it worse in the long term, because then the problem person can come back and continue to be a problem. But also makes me feel like, why am I here? Why,
Right.
what's, you just feel undervalued. And so you just start doing motions, and then you stop thinking. And one of the things I love is when our employees think beyond what I tell them. Think beyond the, if there's a 5-step process and all they think is step 1, it holds us back. I love it when even our brand new legal assistant is like, shouldn't we be doing this? Like, she came up with, why don't we have a pronoun option on our client intake form?
Yeah.
Like, oh, because we're idiots and we never thought of it. And because she was thinking about our processes, and if you undercut or kind of smash down when they have that independent thought, it makes it so there is none.
Yep.
You lose so much, in my not so humble opinion.
No, hey, you're not going to get any arguments here. I think everybody from the top of the organization to the bottom of the organization needs to be encouraged to help solve the problems of the organization, right? And there's all kinds of problems, and as somebody somewhere near the top of an organization, I don't know what the bottom level problems are. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but like I don't know what the problems that the paralegals have are. I don't know what the problems that the associates have. I don't know what the problems are. But that doesn't mean they're not problems that need to be solved. And if they came to me with, I have this problem and you haven't given me the authority to solve it, so you need to solve this problem. Like, why am I solving that problem? I don't know anything about it. So
well, you actually are currently trying to solve a problem for us, and you are the one that does it, so you're currently our holdup.
What's that?
The databases.
Oh. I mean, that's not a pressing problem. But anyway.
I would argue that Hannah thinks it's more pressing than you do. But yes. I think you're right, though, right? They need to both be able to bring it up, and then if they can solve it, let them solve it. And if they can't solve it, we can't dismiss it. I mean, sometimes you have to put it on priority. Sometimes their problem is a pet. We have to be able to justify, or not justify, rank it, right? Or is this a pet peeve? Is this thing? But it can't just be, well, it doesn't matter because you're the mailroom person.
Right.
Because that mailroom person can screw up everything or really help. I always said, always be nice to the janitor, because you never know when you're going to need to have them let you in, late at night because you forgot your keys.
Right.
So one thing, though, that you and I like to debate about, so we have a couple of minutes, is don't come at me, don't tell me about a problem without having thought of solutions. So I always if you have a problem, I just don't want it to be a whining session. I wanted to have ideas of, okay, what could be a solution even if we don't take it, or what can, because I want to know that you've thought more about it than just, oh, I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
But you always.
I do not have that attitude. I don't think that you need to have a solution if you're going to raise a problem. And the reason I don't have that attitude is because I want the problem being raised. I want somebody to raise the problem. And I have been in organizations where the rule was, don't raise a problem unless you're also going to bring a solution to the table. And people just didn't raise problems because they didn't have a solution or they didn't want to be the person to implement the solution, right? I don't have time to solve this problem, but it's a problem, but I'm not going to bring it up, because if I bring it up and then I propose a solution, I have to be the person to implement that. And I don't have enough time. It's not within my authority, whatever. There's a whole lot of reasons why people would not bring up would not bring up problems that sort of go along those lines. I want the problem being raised. I want somebody to say, this is a problem. Let's solve this I don't have a solution. I want people to think about it, right? This is a problem. I've thought about what solutions might look like, but it's either outside of my authority, it's outside of my capability, it's outside of my creativity, it's whatever. But
how do you make that second step happen if you're just okay with tell me the problem? Because I feel like that just gets me into bitching sessions and not I have a problem and it I actually have a true issue here that needs to be resolved rather than I'm annoyed. I like, I guess
yeah,
my phrase of the week has been productive irritation. If you're irritated, I want something other than just irritation.
I mean, I think, it's a stupid answer, but I think, company culture solves that problem, right? I mean, in one hand, you explicitly tell people, like, look, this isn't a situation where you have to bring solutions when you raise problems. This is not the place where you have to do that, but I want you to have thought about it. So that way, when they do have problems, and you tell them that like day one, or when they first start with the company, or early on, this is a mantra of the company that I want to know the problems. You don't have to have a solution. I want you to raise the problem. But I'm also going to ask you questions about the problem. I'm going to want to know, I'm going to ask you very detailed questions about the problem to A, make sure it's a problem, but B, I want you to think about what are some of the root causes of that problem, right? The 5 whys is one of sort of my favorite tools for this, right? You ask why 5 times. Why does something happen? And you ask that sort of at 5 levels of abstraction. Right? This thing happened. Why did that thing happen? Well, that happened because this other thing happened. All right. Well, why did that happen? Right? The 5 whys. So before you raise a problem, or at least along with raising the problem, we're going to get a bunch of whys. And in an attempt to get at something that approximates a root cause. And as long as you have a good faith effort at that, as long as you are a willing participant in that conversation, then no, you don't need to come to me with a solution. I want to hear the problem. I want to hear some thoughts about what you think the root cause is, and we can brainstorm together. We can bring in other people to think about what the problem, think about what solutions might look like. We might have to think really hard about it because maybe the root cause is something that is far beyond the scope of anybody currently at the company to solve. So let's at least get the problem on the table so that we know it exists and then figure out how to solve it.
So first, can you make sure there's something about the 5 whys in the show notes so people can actually know what you're talking about other than the...
Sure, I'll see what I can do. I think I can accomplish that feat.
Second, I think you and I are really kind of saying the same thing in that don't come to... If there's an issue, there's a problem, or there's whatever, assuming that it's something that's not just I'm being harassed or I'm being discriminated against, which the solution is fix it because this should never happen.
Yeah, fair.
Right? Clearly, if it's that issue, it's not how do I have a solution here, because the solution is I'm telling you this is happening, make it stop.
Yeah.
Investigate it, make sure we know the extent and spread of it, and make it stop. But other issues like, hey, I'm going to 5 different things every time, or it's taking me, I feel like this is inefficient, or whatever that is, or hey, I can keep getting yelled at for, by customers about COVID masks. How can I, what can we do here? I think both of us are saying, don't just come and whine. Come in with something more than a bitching session, unless that's what it is, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm fine with the bitching session too. I mean.
Right, but recognize that's what you're doing, and make sure they recognize you know what that's doing.
But if everything's always a bitching session, then maybe you need to find another company to bitch at.
right? Or that's the culture of the company, right? There's some companies that's what they do,
Yeah.
right? And that's what brings them together is, that, which, okay, then that's the culture. But I think that both of you, that a good takeaway is that you gotta walk the walk, right? You can't just say this is our policy, and then if someone comes up and says something, that if you don't follow through, right? If you say you have to wear masks and then you aren't wearing the mask, or every time someone tries to enforce mask wearing, you let it slide,
Yep.
or whatever the latest issue is, that can be a huge problem because you have to have it go through. And then even with this is a problem, you don't need to have a solution, but I'm going to ask you questions because I want to know, and I want to help you have a better job. That's really dependent on you not just saying that at the annual meeting and
Right.
then not actually following through and not actually listening to what they say and then following up on it and trying to do something. So I think that's what my big takeaway with Trisha and Jane was you gotta follow through. It's gotta be more than just lip service. Your actions as leaders of a company truly matter because customers and employees see that. And if your actions don't follow your words, everything falls apart.
That
And
sounds
that's
like a
where you are
really
now.
smart place to end.
Sounds good. And I still have a lot of my sugar teeny left to go. That should tell you something about how rich it is.